Live.
Welcome to another unauthorized and rum-fueled treasure hunt in the sharky waters around the Gatsby Islands with Pirate Queen Raae. Hey. Hey. This is the Pirate Princess, Lilia, and I'm your host, Captain Olavea. Bra jobba, kompis!
Okay.
Lillian and I are going to propose a toast. Stop. Lillian, vi skal skåle.
Okay, let's have a toast.
Dette din. Veldig, Lillian. Vi har helt oppi her. We have poured up here. It's real rum. Da hold den, Lillian. Hold den.
Hva det?
Nei, den din.
Hva det?
Ok. Skål.
Cheers.
Skål.
Skål. Skål.
Hva din?
Det rom.
Nei, det te.
You get nothing past the Pirate Princess.
Ok, Lillian, skal du...
I think we are about ready to get into the tech part of the show.
Yes, let's do it.
Let's do it. Where's the Tinkerbell? I'm gonna swap us over now that the intro is done, so it looks like I'm looking at you guys.
I can see that my microphone is very big today.
I think your microphone fell down or something. Anyway,
No,
so what?
I moved it so that it be where my mouth is.
Okay, the what, the why, and the how. So what are we doing today? Today we're going to refactor some code we already have from the Funk Jump, our winning Funk Jump entry, a Stripe webhook, and we're going to refactor it so that we can use the raw body coming in instead of the JSON version of the body coming in, because then, and I guess that's the how. What was the first one? The why?
No, what?
I always mess this up.
Let's
the
put
what?
it
The what? Okay. The what? Yes, that's what we're gonna do. And the how is that we are gonna no, the why is so that we can verify the Stripe event coming in with Stripe's own verify function. So because when data coming into a Gatsby serverless function or any serverless function cannot really be trusted. I mean, anyone, anywhere could hit that webhook endpoint and send us whatever data they would like. And usually we do some verification ourselves, but also Stripe lets you use their verify function to make sure that this is actually coming from Stripe and that we can use the event and that we don't use it more than once, I think is part in there, and that then it's not too long ago. So like it does a lot of checks so that we can trust the data coming in. And how will we do that is that we are going to configure our Gatsby serverless function so that it does not parse the body coming in, the data coming in as JSON. We're just going to keep it kind of in its raw form because that is what Stripe requires of us to be able to. I'm going to mute you guys. Are you done now?
Yes, you're done.
And I got a hair in my eye. Yeah, so we have, the function from Stripe requires us to get the raw data coming in because, you know, they send that data to our webhook and they know exactly what form it's coming in on. And then they want that raw version of the body and put it into their verify function so that they can verify that the event is actually coming from Stripe.
Yes.
I think this is going to make more sense when we start looking at the code, but I need to, I don't know, I have a here.
But I will say something then. It's very important for me to know that it's coming from Stripe because it's real money here.
I cannot
Right?
see. There's something in my eye.
You must just pretend that it's not there.
But it's there.
You can do it. You must just...
I'm not a professional. at this.
Well,
Like I'm not a professional performer, so I'm not used to having to pretend it's not
you
there.
must
Okay.
pretend
I think it's good now. Okay,
Yes.
yeah, so it's really, really important, but it's always important when you get data in that you verify the data, so you don't just accept whatever comes in. You have to like verify and make sure that it's on the form that you want it to be. And we always do that. We use Joy to kind of tell, like to explain what the kind of data we want to get in, and then actually test that that's the data we're getting in. So, if it's going to be a string, it's actually a string, and all of those things. It's really important. But as you said, especially with Stripe, it's all about money and giving people. So in our case, we're going to give people access to a private GitHub repository if they have paid and if there's a GitHub username there. And we have to verify that that data is coming from Stripe and it's valid. Otherwise, it could be just people, hitting our endpoint and conforming to how we expect the data to be when it comes in. And then, we giving them access to our private GitHub repositories, even if they haven't paid, and even if it's not a valid Stripe event. So yeah, so that's what I always also forgot to give my computer electricity. So we're going to do that too. Wow. Okay. I guess that's it then.
It's how.
It's the how. Well, I talked a little bit about how, but let's do the how.
Yeah.
So let's add it to the stream. And also fix my hair. I'm all about the appearances today, I guess. Okay. So, yeah, I just made sure that we updated to the latest Gatsby version. So for people following along, it's been a hard road, because Gatsby for the longest time didn't give us access to the raw data coming in, and that was really I really enjoyed that they kind of take the data coming in and parsing it as JSON for us, so we don't have to do like JSON parse on everybody. But as I said, Stripe needs the actual raw body, and we couldn't access that. And then they released it, and it worked on, in production or up on, Gatsby Cloud, but it didn't work in develop. So that made it really hard to test with. But as of yesterday, after we had a little chat with Gatsby, they pushed a change. So that would be Gatsby version 4.15.2, and it's also going to be pushed into the 4.16 release that I think is coming next week, because they're doing like every other week now. So anyway, it is now in, it's now working. But I thought we're going to have a little bit of a look at a kind of a simpler example, because the code that we're going to get into is pretty, what did I want to say? Complicated, not complicated, but more complex. So I've been writing a lot about this in the latest emails. So if we do here, Stripe validation. So as I said, this is like one of those more regular examples of using a Gatsby serverless function. You export the default handler. And here we could do city year straight on the request body. So by being able to destructure request body means that this is actually a JSON object or an actual object. So we can get city and year. If it didn't parse that for us, we would get errors here because it would be a buffer and we wouldn't be allowed to get the city and year. I think it's a buffer. And so when we want to do when we want to be able to then verify with Stripe, we need access to that raw body. So what Gatsby did, which is kind of similar to how they do their pages now, is that you can, in addition to the default handler that you're exporting, you can also export a config object. So in our config object, so far, this only body parsers are things that you can configure, but I'm guessing in the future, they'll add like other things. When you want to configure your serverless functions, you'll add it to this configuration object. So by adding this configuration object, right now we're saying for all types of incoming calls, we want it to be raw. but you could say that only if the request to the serverless function is asking for a JSON response, then we use raw. Or is that way? But anyway, since this is a webhook, the only kind of person, I guess not person, entity that's going to use this webhook is Stripe, and a webhook is only going to be used to that one purpose. So we're not like reusing it for different purposes. We're just going to say that, okay, no matter what coming in here, we do not want to parse the body. We just want to have the raw body. So that's what we're doing here. I'm going to mute you guys while you talk. Oh, he muted himself. Nice. Okay.
I'm super quick.
You're super quick, getting
Yes.
professional. You're professional. Okay. So yeah, so we need to export a configuration object so that we are telling Gatsby, do nothing to our body this time around. We want the raw body coming in. And then we could use from the Stripe SDK, we can use, I'm saying the contrast here is not that good, but we're going to do it in code afterwards as well. Instead of using the event kind of data coming on the request, we are going to ask Stripe to construct event, is what they call it. But what that construct event function is doing for us, it's that it's taking in the body, and it's also checking the signature and a bunch of other things, making sure that this event is actually coming from Stripe and it's not being replayed, because that's also something that can happen, is that like if it keeps on like asking again and again and again the same function with the same data, like that's a sort of attack. Like, I'm not a security expert, but like it checks a lot of things for us to make sure that this is an actual Stripe event coming in. And since we now know that this is a Stripe event coming in and it's been verified, we could actually use the data on that event. We can trust the data on that event. We can never really trust the data on the request body coming in, because, as I said, anybody could send that in. And sometimes that's okay. Like, anybody should be able to, for a public API, anybody is supposed to be able to ask for anything. And also for a comment system, like anybody's supposed to be able to send in a comment and stuff like that. But when we're working here with a webhook, and the webhook is going to do something substantial, it's really, really important that we know that this is a trusted data coming in. I feel like I'm repeating myself now, but yeah.
No,
So
it's
then,
good.
yeah, so then we can handle the event. And as you see in my example here, we don't do anything. What we're going to do in our code is that we're going to use, in the webhook, we're going to use that data, and then we're going to give the person GitHub user access to a private repository. Yeah. And as you said, I wrote a little bit about how this was not working, but it's now working.
We talked to the team, the framework team. It was Mikael and where are my notes? Jude, and then what was the guy in Berlin?
It was let me have a check. Khalid. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but
I don't know either.
So
that was great.
Yay. So to our code.
Yes.
So what our code does is, this is the Gatsby Function entry that we had last year, that won, woohoo. But anyway, you authenticate with GitHub. Your GitHub username is sent to create a Stripe checkout session. Then you pay, and then Stripe calls the webhook with information about that GitHub user, and payment status, and then we give that person access to the GitHub repo. So we can look at the code we have now, because I did a hack. So since we couldn't really trust the data coming in, what I did is that we only used the ID of the checkout session, and then we retrieved that session. So we kind of said, okay, we don't trust this data, but we're going to take the ID, we're going to grab that session, and with that session, we get the GitHub username and the payment status. Because anybody could fake like whatever comes in, but if they just sent us an actual valid session ID and we go and grab that session, the worst thing that would happen in this case is that we keep giving the same user access to the private GitHub repository again and again and again and again. And what GitHub does is they're like, well, we've already given access, so like nothing happens. So it's like, so in this case, it works to do it this more hacky way. But now that we can verify the event, we can grab this metadata straight off of the event coming in from Stripe instead of going through this like extra step of retrieving the Stripe session. So that's what we're going to do. And to test this, we're going to do something that I find really cool, which took me a while to actually discover. But I've known about it for a year and a half or something now, but it's the Gatsby CLI. So what we can do is that we can run yarn develop, which nicely...
You say the Stripe CLI.
Yes. So we'll run
you
yarn
said
develop.
The Stripe CLI, but you
yes,
said Gatsby CLI.
The Stripe CLI.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Oh, I don't know why this isn't working now, though.
That was me. I did nothing.
Oh boy, my packages. I don't know what's going on. I just upgraded to 4.15.2. So I don't know why. Of course it worked earlier. Oh yes, with these newer versions of Gatsby, we need to also do React and stuff, and I forgot to do that. So yarn add React and React DOM.
Whoa!
This project
That's
is almost
new. I never do that.
I think all of your starters already have that included.
Okay.
So, but it's just because this project was on 3 up until not long ago. So
on Gatsby 3. On Gatsby 3. Okay.
Yeah, it's to be on Gatsby 3. So, because we had functions with Gatsby 3, but now that we're upgraded to 4, this is the way to do it. Anyway, with the Gatsby CLI, we can actually kind of run Stripe events locally on our machine, which is really nice. We run yarn develop for our Gatsby site, which then gives us, the site on localhost. So yes, please. Do you want access to this life-changing repo? Yes, you do. And that's when you log in and we grab your GitHub event. But anyway, what's more interesting is that we also then have our functions running. So we have the Stripe webhook. And this is going to error out, when you run it like this, because get is not allowed. Like this is only supposed to be used by Stripe. But so what we can do is that we can tell the Stripe CLI after logging in. You see, I've already done that, but let's do clean. We can do Stripe listen forward to localhost 8000 API Stripe webhook, which is the name, the address for my Stripe for my Stripe webhook. So what we can do here is that, we should listen to events coming into this the Stripe account that we are logged into, and then instead of like Stripe handling them in their webhook thing, they forward it to our local host function instead. But then we would have to sit around waiting for somebody to, hit something with that, logging in and paying and checking out and stuff. We would have to like wait for that. So in addition, we can do with the CSI as well, we can do the Stripe trigger checkout session completed, which is pretty cool. So we can run a kind of a checkout session, instead of having somebody go through the UI, go through our site, or I go through my local host site and like do the things and everything, being sent and blah, blah, blah. I can just sit here in my terminal and say, I want to kick off a Stripe checkout session. So if I do that, it starts like running through. It has to do a couple of different things. It's doing a checkout session, a payment page, blah, 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 blah. If we look at Stripe now, it's actually this, or our Stripe listening, it says, oh, it tried to send all these events over to our Stripe webhook, and all of them returned 422, which is request cannot be handled, I think. And that's because they have to be, we are only handling, where's my webhook? There it is. We are only handling checkout session completed. Because we are saying here that the data coming in, it has to be of type checkout session completed. And we're also checking that it is a get. So for anything that is not a post, we send a 405 error status. And if it is a post, we are checking to see if it's a check-in session completed, because we only want to respond to the checkout session completed event. So if you go back here, it says that, oh, it must be checkout session completed. And then on this last one, it said GitHub username not found, because it couldn't find a username on that checkout session that it was grabbing. But this is how you can then actually like test your things locally, and why I find it so important that the Stripe, or what I really like about Gatsby function is that it's really easy to set up locally your Gatsby functions, and then you can actually test them properly locally without doing like a lot of magic. And why I was so sad when the raw body didn't work, but now it works and we can keep on working. So now that we have everything, okay.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
I remember back in the day when Stripe first came to Norway.
Mm-hmm. Those were the days.
Yeah, at some point there I was setting up like the AWS thing and everything. And but you actually need that kind of something to make the Stripe work, right? You can't, you must have Gatsby functions or AWS or something. You can't just do it. Or could you?
Yeah, so you
can do it with that link thing, can't you?
You can do more and more with Stripe without having any server-side code yourself. You can use the Stripe payment links. You can even create kind of payment links in front-end code. But if you want to do more complex things, like we want to send in that metadata, we want to say that, okay, this is the user that is logged into our site, and we want to add that user to our checkout session, then we have to create the session on the server, which we do in another serverless function. And then also, if you want something to happen after the session is completed, or on really any Stripe event, that needs to happen in a webhook that Stripe calls. Like your website that your user is using can't really like get the events from Stripe. I guess it could if there was like web, but it doesn't really receive anything back from Stripe, because you get sent to that Stripe checkout page, and then you're redirected back to your website. And that connection can, maybe the internet goes down, or the person doesn't really complete all the way back to your site, so you never know if they're back on your site, so you can't really kick off anything there. And also there's a ton of other events, as you can see here, just making a session happen. There's payment intent, and there's succeeded and charge succeeded. And if you want to respond to any of these events, you need to create your own webhook that responds to this event. And I find it interesting, like that's one of these things with terminology. So a serverless function could be like an API endpoint, which we often call it, like an API endpoint, like get all comments. You'll ask the kind of an API, you would say you're calling an API to get something or post something and stuff like that. But when it's an endpoint that is being called by another system, we often call that endpoint a webhook. So it's exactly the same as all the other serverless functions or non-serverless functions, but any server function you can like hit from. Anyway, now I'm babbling. But the point is, if you call it like an API endpoint, URL, webhook, like all of it is addresses on the internet, and you're calling them. But the convention is to name these URLs that are called from other system webhooks, because that's the intent. They're like they're a way for Stripe to hook into your system. But that's the reason why they're called webhooks. Or like it doesn't change the technology. It's just a different name. Okay. Did that answer? your question?
Yes.
Yes. But you said AWS.
So
in the beginning,
the question is, do we need something like this? Yes.
yes. If you want to,
Unless we want something very easy, like
Yes.
simple, just the link, pay here, and then everything happens on Stripe.
yes,
Yes.
yes. Or if you have some other system hooked into Stripe where they do it for you, that could also happen. But if you're going to be responsible for responding to Stripe events, you need to create webhooks for that. So let's get cracking, because what we then want to do here is, instead of grabbing this session from Stripe, we just want to use the session straight off the bat here, after we make sure that it's valid. So the first thing we want to do then is actually to go on over to my code that I showed you and just copy this configuration object. So if we add that to the top of our file here, we can show pretty well that this is now, it's changed the body to a type raw. And then we can go back down to our webhook, and we can start trying to do the work we need. And again, since I can feel my head is a little tired today, we're just gonna copy all of this, and at least I'm gonna copy this part. Oh, I need to fix that. It's hard to copy on my page. Don't want that. Okay.
Don't you want the button, the click?
Yeah, I should have one of those buttons. So all of this needs to happen. So now I can't do request body type here because it's not going to be a JSON object. So all of this needs to happen above here. And then we need to initiate Stripe. So what I do is that I've actually done this in a helper function. So let's just do that, like, because I don't mess up my architecture here. So I have these API service helpers. So I have Stripe. So let's create that helper function for us, because that has Stripe already initiated for us. So I already have create session and retrieve sessions. I might not need retrieve session anymore, but let's do a verify event. And we'll return the Stripe webhooks construct event, body, signature, and endpoint secret. So what we need to get in here is the body. And then I don't think it's asynchronous even. I think it just does it without calling out anywhere. It just, yeah. So we need a body, we need a signature, and we need the endpoint secret. So I already put the endpoint secret in our environment variables. I'm just going to double check that off screen afterwards. But we need the body, we need the signature. And I don't know what, but like all backend people, they like to abbreviate their naming. So they call it SIG instead of signature. And the same with request and response. I like to keep, since I've been copy pasting so many examples, I've ended up using rec and res, but I think I just want to start using the real full words. I feel like that is nicer. So we need the body and the signature, and then our endpoint secret is going to be process and then endpoint secret or something. I'm going to find out what it's called. I'm going to find out what I've called it. I have some notes.
I got an important message from the Pirate Princess now.
Okay.
She emptied out her Hama beads. Is that what you call it? Do you call it
no!
Do you call it Heime or Hama?
Hama beads.
Hama.
Okay. So now we have, I'd called it Stripe signing secret. And that is, if you look in, when you run the Stripe CLI, you get here, your webhook signing secret for, it's going to be, this value here that you then copy. But when you do this in production, there is a signing secret that you copy from the dashboard, Stripe dashboard, and then you put it into the environment variables of your site when it's built. So if you use Gatsby Cloud, you have to put it into the Gatsby Cloud environment system, or in Netlify, you can do it the way that Netlify likes it. But in this case, when you were using the CLA, you get it here, and it will change every now and then in the CLI. When you do it in the dashboard, it's not going to change until you ask it to change. It's not going to change on you. Anyway, so yes, verify event. So we need the body and the signature, and then also the signing secret. And let's export that, verify event. In our webhook now, we have, and the signature comes on the request header, the signature, and then we have the body. It's going to be the request body. I'm going to change these to request at some point. And then we try to get the event. So event, and there we had verify event. Did I save? Yes. So let's get it. It's Stripe verify event. Sorry.
Oh, look at this. I removed my
Verify.
microphone. Now you're happy.
Body signature. And then let's console log the type coming in here before we do anything else. Just to see if this is kind of working. So what will happen if, if we don't get to this point, if something is wrong with the event, we're going to get an error here. So let's have a look and see where we're at. So we got a 500. Let's see what the error is. Okay, so we're getting unable to extract timestamp and signature for header. And I think maybe that's because we haven't deployed. So let's try again. So this is the typical error response you will get when it's actually not getting the proper, like the body is not, when the body is a JSON object and not the raw body. So this error is being thrown from our verify Stripe event, and then there's a problem. Okay. So what I'm thinking is that we added the config here, telling it to do a raw parser, and that it wasn't, since I didn't redeploy, it didn't catch that. So let's see if this works. No. So this is going to be funny if this isn't working in develop. Do I have the correct version? So let's see where we're at. Stripe webhook. So let's then console log before we try to do anything. Let's console log the body and see if it's actually a JSON object or if we're getting the raw object. And you see how like a much more how much more convenient this is when we have the Stripe CLI set up, so that we can just trigger as many events as we want and test without having to like go through the UI or go into the Stripe dashboard. Yeah, so we are getting a buffer, so that's good, but we are unable to extract timestamp and signature from header anyway, which is weird. It means that something is wrong on our in our code. So I have asked this to be an object with body and signature, but I'm sending them in not as an object. So there you go. Okay, so we've gotten further. We're getting data is required. So that's great. It means that The body is a buffer and our event is verified and it's of type checkout session completed or charge succeeded and other things. So that's great. So that means we all the way down to this line. Let's remove the body now that we know that it's a buffer. So now we can just kind of delete all of this retrieve session, and we can rather say that we want to validate it on the object coming in. So let's, boop, it goes. But then we want to get this, we want to get session from Stripe metadata GitHub. So our object, so with Stripe events, they look like this. They have a type and then they have data and then there's an object on it and it's the ID of the object. So since we know this is a checkout session completed and we know that our checkout session completed should have a metadata object on it and it should then have GitHub, we can expect that. So joy object GitHub, and that should be a joy string.
Oi.
And it should be required. Okay? Not GitHub. Then we verify it or we validate that that is the correct shape of the object. And then instead of using the session from Stripe that we earlier retrieved, we'll use the value, which is kind of the request. No, so we need to take the event. We need to validate the event. So first we verify the event and kind of make sure that it's all the signature stuff is working. Then we ask to validate the event to make sure that it's the on the schema that we are expecting. And then we can use the value coming back from that to get the GitHub. So maybe it's not required. Well, it is required. So it's required. Boom, boom, boom. And we then don't have to check if it's there because we know that it's there. So it's the value, but it's not even just that. It's value, data, object, metadata. So it's value, data, object, metadata. And we don't have to check if it's there because we've validated that it's actually there. So that would be a username. And then we also want to make sure that it's paid. So we'll say that, okay, we want the payment status to be the only valid. So our only valid type that we want to work with is the checkout session completed. And the only valid payment status we want to work with is that it's paid. Was it just paid? Yes, paid. And that it has to have a GitHub field on our metadata object. Okay. Boop. Gone. That code is also gone. So let's try to run this, and we're going to run into a little bit of a problem because we are triggering this from our CLI. So it's obviously not going to add any metadata for us. When the person runs through all of this and we create the session, we add that metadata. But when we just trigger it now, we'll see that either we have a problem with, the type not being correct, but also in this last one where the type is correct, it's a checkout session completed. There is no data object metadata GitHub on this session. And this I only learned today, everyone. So I hope this is going to be super helpful for the people watching. You can actually, when you're triggering Stripe CLI events, you can actually add the data. So let's have a look at how that looks like. So Stripe CLI webhook. I don't know if they have that on here, but if we do Stripe CLI, where did I find that information?
What are you looking for?
You can do add. So let's do Stripe CLI. I think here. No, where did I find this? The CLI documentation. Okay, stripe
Maybe
CLI.
it's the reference. Stripe CLI reference is all the way down there. Yeah.
Maybe. Here, stripe CLI reference. Yes, this is the fun part of using of docs, right? Okay, so here, yes, good call, Ola. It was called. I don't like it when they hijack my find. Boo. I want to just do a regular find. Why
Yeah.
are you messing with my find? Okay. Because now it's doing it. Now it's like finding stuff.
Yeah,
I want to find
everywhere.
stuff everywhere and the whole freaking here webhook commands. Okay. Latest. But where is the trigger? Trigger events. Yay. Okay. Here, add. Look at that. You can add to resource. And it took me a while. Okay, I'm gonna.
So maybe now we're just going to pretend that we have a real user in a way.
We're going to pretend that we have some metadata. We can just add whatever metadata we want. So it's resource and then path, and then value. But this first thing is it's the resource. And if we head on back, we'll see that our resource is called checkout session. So we need to take checkout session. So let's try again. We're going to do trigger checkout session completed. And then we're going to add checkout session. And then I think it was semicolon. Yes. And then path. So that would then be meta data GitHub. And let's just do test. Okay. How are we feeling about this?
I'm feeling great.
Oh, John is here. How are you feeling about it, John? He's listening while painting. I love that we can be your background friend, like background music or background socialize. I don't know what I wanted to call it. Anyway, it makes me happy. Anyway, so let's.
Hey, you can't read, John. This is.
I didn't read it. I didn't read it. I just answered him. So, do you want to read it?
Listening while I'm painting.
I did maybe read him. Sorry.
I think you did actually. That's great, John.
I thought I did it. It's so funny. Like I thought I was just like thinking it, but since I am streaming, I am also saying everything I think.
Han maler.
Okay, so let's trigger this and
Det
see
vet
if
jeg
it
ikke, men du kan
works.
se hodet hans. I'm going to show. Don't take away the comment. I'm going to show it to Lillian.
Yes. But look at that. We have a 200, which means that all of these events that we didn't want to have, we send back a 422, which means we're not going to look at that. And then on the last one, we have a 200. Okay. Did you want to show something, Ola, before I head on over to the code?
Just head to the code. Do you hear me now?
Okay.
You just head to the code. I'm just going to show her the comment.
Yes.
So,
in our log now, we can see that all of these. Okay. But I can't do it while I'm muting.
Okay.
You can see that we have, okay, the event is a checkout session completed. And then, did we both mute? Okay, anyway. And then my GitHub service is saying that, yes, it's adding repo access to rate test.org, rate test private repo for the user test. So that's kind of cool.
Oh.
So anybody, watching want to get access to my test private repo, they can shout out their username and I can add them by adding them here. Are you Ola Vea? Aren't you?
Yes.
So
like that.
Should
send
an invite
that's me.
your way.
The sun is shining in through my window here. It's great. It only does that at night.
So boop, it's working. That was
all we were gonna
say. Yeah. Ooh.
That is great. So now I have access to the private repo.
Yeah, but you only have, so I'm made myself a test organization with some test repos and stuff to be able to test this stuff on.
So it's very boring repo.
It's a very boring repo. I shouldn't tell you, but even if you go through the solution to all your problems is here by access to my life-changing private GitHub repository,
Yeah.
there is very little in that repository too, but there is a fun reference to what's it called? The Galaxy book.
Yes.
Suddenly
Yes.
it eludes me.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the
Hitchhiker's
Galaxy.
Guide to the Galaxy. It's just one of the cultural things that I kind of decided that I needed to know about after going to uni for computer science. And it was one of the really good ones. Like, I really recommend Hitchhiker's Guide to
Yeah.
the Galaxy.
I agree.
I do not particularly recommend watching all the Star Wars movies. But
Oh, I remember when we watched the Star Wars movies. Yeah. Let's not get into that.
But I did it, and now I can
Yeah.
get the references because, I mean, even at the conference that we were at last week, there was one of the sponsors doing Star Wars references, and I have to say, like, it's a little more fun when you get the references. Like,
I remember after we saw that one movie, and you said to Eirik Mir, our most diehard Star Wars fan, he has all the movies, he has read every single book in Star Wars, and you said, "Hey, I'm not sure that he was really such a good actor." And
Yeah,
he
Luke.
was like, who are you talking about? Actually, and you were like, Luke.
And I had to backpedal out of that conversation so bad.
Yeah.
Oh, Timor is here as well. Hello.
Hello.
I know. I've seen you follow the whole raw parser debacle on Twitter, and happy to say that it now works. So, yay!
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not a debacle. You found the bug and they fixed the bug.
I know.
It's great.
For a little while there, though, it felt like it might have been a feature and not a bug. So I'm very happy we all fell down on the side of bug, because that's what I
because
felt.
we love bugs.
We love bugs.
We love them. Yeah.
I'm reading this book now where this guy calls his sister Bug all the time, like a cute thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny when you're coming from a software perspective.
Yeah. We love them. We love bugs.
Okay. Are we ready for the summary?
Oh, I got it. I got it here. What?
The what was refactoring our Stripe webhook to verify the event coming in.
Yeah.
So that we can make sure that it's coming from Stripe and not from anywhere else, and so that we can stop using our kind of roundabout way of making sure that it was correct data without doing the Stripe verification. And I guess the next is how.
No?
I did why. I did what and why.
You did why?
I did why because we need to make sure that the data coming into our webhook is actually coming from Stripe, and the best way to do that is to ask the Stripe SDK to verify it and not try to do that ourselves.
Great. Sorry, I missed it.
And the how is to use. So I have a little helper function here, but if we go and look at the helper function, what we're doing is that we're using the Stripe webhooks construct event function that is part of the Stripe SDK that needs the body, the signature from the header of the request, and then also a signing secret that every when you set a webhook up in Stripe, you'll get a signing secret. So you need to put that into your environment variables. But when you try to do this with, the old Gatsby Serverless function, this would error out because the body would not be what Stripe expected, because it would be a JSON object. And what it does expect is a raw body butter. Some buddy butter coming in there. A body buffer. And now with Gatsby version 4.15.2 and then also 4.16 and forward, you can say, oh, I want this body to be a raw buffer instead of being a parsed JSON object. And the way we do that is to export a config object telling Gatsby that all types of requests should not parse the body and just keep it raw. And then we hand that off to our verify function. And we also grab the signature from the header. I need to get all of these like extra pop-up things to go away because they're very confusing. Anyway, we grab the signature from the request header, and then we grab the body from the request now as a raw buffer, and then we use that. And when we've done this little kind of construct event, we know that the event that we got back is an event that we can trust. Stripe has said that this is actually coming from us, and it's been coming, and everything is okay. But I still like to use validation schemas because that just makes the code so much simpler. So in this case, we only want to handle checkout session completed events. So I say that I expect the event to be of type checkout session completed. I say that I expect it to be payment status paid, because if they somehow ended up not paying, something went wrong, we don't want to keep on going. And in our case, we also need to make sure that there's a GitHub username on the metadata, because we are granting access to a GitHub repository, and we no longer need this ID. So we're kind of saying we want all of these things, and then we validate, and we also say that there's allowed to be like a bunch of other things on this object, but at least it needs to have the things that we are asking for. And then we can grab the username from the validated event, which is value, because that's what's coming back here. I think maybe it would be a lot nicer if we do rename symbol and we do validated event. That makes better sense in this code. Okay, so validated event, data object, metadata, GitHub. And then we add the GitHub user to the repo using another helper function that I have. So yeah, that was it.
Yes.
But in addition, if there's new folks coming in, we also looked at how you can test then all of this locally, which is what makes this pretty sweet, because we are running our Gatsby serverless functions locally with just running yarn or Gatsby develop like we would to test our site. No need to like set up proxies or tunnels, blah, 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 all this boring stuff. It's just there running with our site. But then you can use this, and then you can use the Stripe CLI to test Stripe events. So first we set up a, I'm gonna close this down and set it up again. We say that our Stripe CLI should listen to all events happening on that account and then forward them to localhost 8000 API Stripe webhook, which is the address, the URL for our Stripe webhook locally, which is cool. You know, that's cool. It's local. And then in another window, we can trigger events. And what's super cool that I just found out today, I don't know why, is that we can even then add metadata. Look at that. We can say that the checkout session should have an object metadata, and it should have a field GitHub with the value of www. So when we hit this, the events are happening. They are forwarded to our locally running webhook, and we are rejecting to do anything with all of these that are, you know, the wrong type. But then on this last one, or this first one, I don't know what. On this last one, we get a 200 because it's actually working. I don't know. Here it is. So we got an error on all of this, but then the last running here, it's just because it didn't have like a nice green one. I missed it. We are adding www to our test private repo and our test RAAE test org.
Yes.
Boop,
Great.
boop, boop,
Boop, boop, boop.
So the Stripe CLI amazes me. And as I said, I have been, you know, tearing my hear out because I've been able to trigger sessions, but it's been really hard to test like with metadata. And then I figured out today like it has to be a way, but I had to upgrade my Stripe CLI. So obviously when I did this last summer when we were running the Gatsby Serverless Functions, you were not able to add extra data, but with the new CLI you are. So Stripe is
Yes.
also evolving.
I'm so glad that Stripe is like the winner in this field because they're great.
They're great.
They're great for developers. They're really good. And I remember, but I'm not going to talk about that. Can I share a shameless plug?
You can share a shameless plug. And while Ula is sharing a shameless plug, if you have any questions, pop them in the chat and I'll,
Ja.
try to answer them afterwards.
Vil du være med også når jeg viser fram bildene av deg og sånn? No, she doesn't want to join it, but this is Lillian's card from the conference, structured content conference, and I made a little blog post here. I put it up today because while Benedicta was listening to the talks, Lillian was helping me. Well, she wasn't actually, but she gave me a lot of good ideas for my code. Look at this. Lillian's idea. The frog, the pooper frog, its core supports unplugging in it. So in the code here from Gatsby for global state on our upgrade to Gatsby v4, there are so many long words, but we just cut it down and use the emojis. Look at this. Look at this. You can go and have a look. You can go
Maybe
and have a
the
look.
first language, I think there is like this like code language that is all emojis.
Okay, I want to check it out. But they're a bit late to the game because Lillian and I, we already did it. We already did it. You're too late, people. So,
well, I think they did it before that.
Well, I think you're wrong. So look at this. This is the map of our trip. We started here. This purple house is our house here. And then the river goes right by our house. So we started on the roof and we jumped into the river with our boat and we sailed down here. This is our little boat here. Sailing down. We're sailing down the river. Oh, yeah. And then we come here and this is Sanity's Riverside Inn here. They got a real cool futuristic office here and we went in there.
Cool.
That's right. That was my shameless plug. Everybody go and check it out on Olavea, gtsb.io/blog/1-week, because this was the first week, or last week was the first week of our Cloudinary plugin upgrade. And then next week, there'll be another a blog post because we're meeting them. We're meeting some new people from Cloudinary on Monday.
Oh, online in a video meeting. I thought
in a video meeting. It's going to be great. And I asked Lillian, do you want to join us? And she was like, to a boring meeting? No way.
No way she wanted to do that.
It's not going to be boring. She knows nothing. Yeah. Okay. That's it. Check it out.
I added, let's see.
Yeah. You added it here. Like that.
Yeah. I'm gonna make this big. I like this one better actually than the
Yeah, me too. I'm using Gatsby's just like the Gatsby cloud thing, and I love it. Yeah. It's very hard to remember the gtsb.io. It's a dot there between the B and the IO. It's very hard to remember it, but
I mean, I'm gonna show everyone. I haven't even fixed it yet because I just feel like it's oh no, you can't see my screen. I'm gonna share.
You can share it?
Yeah, so in one of my emails, I have such a hard time with Gatsby. So
there you go, Gatsby. You said it, Gatsby up there. Is that what you were talking about?
But this is correct, isn't it? Gatsby. Yeah. But where is it? I think it's the one. Yeah, here. Gatsby.
But that is what they're writing, though. That is what they use in the link from Gatsby. Look at that.
Is it?
No. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No.
Almost.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was funny. I haven't fixed that yet. I don't
But
know
why
how that
did
is
they
for.
remove the A there? GTSB. Why? Why?
I don't know.
They
This is-
should have called it Gatsby. That would have been great. That would have been great. Or Batsby. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Batsby.
So now that we're on like a shameless plug, I would
Yes.
say that working with the Cloudinary plugin, I've been going down a little bit of a rabbit hole here on kind of life cycle, I guess, or source plugins. So if you do the source plugins emails, you'll see that we have like how to paginate through APIs.
Yes.
And it's the direct mutation of node is a big no-no. Remember to await node creation and when to create Gatsby nodes. And these are some older ones, but starting to get a pretty good collection here of information if you are into digging a little bit deeper when it comes to source plugins and node
Gatsby
creation.
image CDN is still relevant, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Or not for Cloudinary, but because then you use Cloudinary as CDN, but for other
everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, in 2 weeks we're getting Grace and Hex on to do to do an upgrade of his remote image because he has a really cool. So all of that stuff that we have done to our plugins to kind of support, when we do our YouTube, there's a thumbnail and then we have to be like create remote node or, support Gatsby image CDN. He has a great plugin where instead of then YouTube, our YouTube source plugin doing all that image stuff, we could ask people to use the Gatsby plugin remote image and say that on node type YouTube, take the oembed thumbnail URL and use that to create a remote image. So we don't have to. And that's what I really like with, like, this is when the Gatsby plugin ecosystem really works, because then our code could just be about, sourcing YouTube data, and then remote images plugin could be about then grabbing those remote images and downloading them into as local files or using the Gatsby image CDN. And I was like, okay, this is a really cool plugin. And I asked him, so, what about Gatsby image CDN support? Like we have done in our plugin and that we did for the Scraping Bee crowdcast videos. There we also had a remote file that needed to be the image. And we had to support both CDN and, local files. But instead of us doing the code there as well, we could have used Gatsby plugin remote image if it also had support for Gatsby image CDN. So I asked, and he was like, heck yes! And saw that we had been working on that for the Scraping Bee demo. So I was like, yeah, do you want to come on stream? And he was like, sure. And we have scheduled. So in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to prepare a little bit just to make sure that we are able to do this in an hour while also having some chit chat. But Grayson is coming on stream and that we're going to update his plugins so that you can decide if you want to do download this local image or use Gatsby CDN when you deploy.
Great.
So that's kind of cool.
It's going to be great having him on. That's going to be great.
Yes.
I've seen videos with him. Yeah. It's going to be great.
And
great.
He works at Gatsby, right? Yes, he's a staff software engineer at Gatsby.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh,
it took me a while.
Look at that old photo.
It's like mine.
It's so cute.
Oh no, I've changed mine now, but for a long time I had like a picture from when I was like 22 on all my social media.
Yeah.
But yes, so he's coming on and he's a staff software engineer, which I've understood is higher than senior engineer, if I've understood the American titles correctly. So
but I have a question for you then.
Yes.
So it says where he's from there. NC, is that North Carolina?
I think so. That's where Becky is from, my cousin.
I've been to North Carolina. It's great down there. Yes, North Carolina. Ooh, look at this. Look at that. He's got a waterfall.
He's got a waterfall.
That is great.
Oh,
Okay.
it's west in North Carolina.
Yes, groovy.
Because we went to the Outer Banks, which was here.
Yeah.
Somewhere here.
Yeah, that's very different from where he is.
Yeah. That's where we went. They had some really good donuts there, I remember.
I can't
I
remember
places from
donuts.
food. Well, that's because you probably didn't eat the donuts.
I didn't.
Anyway, let's wrap this up.
Yep. So next time, what are we doing?
I don't know what we're doing next time, actually.
That's okay. That's fine. We know what we're doing with Grace and Hicks. That's the important thing. Okay, people. It's been great. Lilian, du må komme.
Hvorfor?
Ok, du må ikke komme, men vi skal,
Hva skal vi gjøre?
vi skal avslutte. Det er avslutning.
Hæ? Nå.
She wants to keep on.
Hvor ned?
Ok, you don't du må ikke, Lilian. Du må ikke. Sier du nei til å komme? She always comes. vi må slutte nå, Lilian.
Because it means that we are quitting the show, which means that she has to go to bed and stop doing her Hama beads.
But
Okay, I'm muting you until she is over her thing. Or I will have to do the ending today. Well, instead of you get to watch me. Boo, boo, boo. Any questions? Any questions? I'll be happy to ask any questions. Or not. Let's just hang out. Let's just hang out. So I don't know what I want to do next time. I think maybe we could show some of the work that we've done on the Cloudinary plugins next week, because we might want to merge some things. Hello, you're muted.
She says yes to coming.
Okay.
That was a close one. Du kan gå nærmest, du.
Very late.
Pass hodet ditt, fordi mikrofonen har kommet til et nytt sted. Ikke sant, mikrofonen er på et nytt sted. Har du stoppet på riktig sted? Jeg tror det. Ok? Du må holde den opp til mikrofonen. Sånn, ja. Sånn, ja. Oi, sånn. Ikke skumpe den. Sånn, ja. Andre veien. Ok. This has been another unauthorized and rum-fueled treasure hunt. In the sharky waters around the Gatsby Island with pirate queen.raae. I'm your host, Captain Oravea, and today we did some Stripe stuff. And this is Pirate Princess Lilian. See you next Thursday. Blås mot den.
Woo!